Welcome to Meeple, uniting players around the world. A 30-minute exploration of PJ and Gareth's board game experiences from across both sides of the Atlantic. Each episode they share their thoughts and opinions on the world of board games, including their favourite themes, games, hot topics, and much, much more.
Hey gang, and welcome to episode 79, Board Game Teaching Tips. How do you like to teach a board game? As always, I am PJ.
And I am Gareth.
And Gareth's ready to tell me how he likes to teach.
I love teaching games.
You do. You really do.
It's one of those things. I just like to read a good rulebook. That might be just I'm reasonably sad, but I'll read a rulebook for fun. And my wife looks at me that I am sick in the head by reading a rulebook just for fun.
If I'm honest, I can't stand rule books. They're important, but I don't like them. I'm not a fan.
Is that a thing? Is that a concentration thing, or because we all learn differently? Don't we? Some people learn from listening and reading, and tactile learning.
For me, I've started to geek out over player aids.
Ooh, that's another episode, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I would prefer that you spend more time on a good player aid, but you need the rule book, so and that's what we're here to talk about, right? So, do you want to tell everyone why we're talking about this week?
I can't remember. Because last week we talked about something, and I've now clearly in my mind. So, and you should be explained to everybody because I've forgotten.
Well, I was giving you an opportunity to shine, right?
Because I love rulebooks, isn't it? It's all about me.
It is. It's all about you. No, it's not, so when I was an undergrad and took a theater class, they always taught us to make your partner look seen, make sure your partner looks good. And so I was trying to make you look good, but
it fell flat.
It's okay. So you and I were talking about something else, a topic that I will not mention now so that we can reveal it in the future. You shared with me a Facebook post about teaching. The subject came up. I'm pulling it up right now.
It was on Boardgame UK Trading and Chat, which is a Facebook group that the UK team.
Yep. And someone posted 4 bullet points describing the teaching experience, I suppose, right? It's like, so, and now I'm quoting, here's how people usually seem to teach board games. Number 1, someone spends 5 to 30 agonizing minutes explaining how a game works. I'm sure all of our listeners can identify with that one. Number 2, no one at the table understands anything you just explained. Number 3, the game starts. And number 4, and I think this is what was the impetus for the conversation. As each game mechanic arises, people start asking, hold on, how does this work? You can skip back to step 3. And that was kind of the post on Facebook that was like, let's talk about teaching. Let's talk about how people teach. How does Gareth teach? How does Katie and I teach? How do we like to be taught games? And just in general, what people think about if you're going to be taught a game, what is your go-to teaching method, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to start with last night. So we had my father and mother-in-law over yesterday, who aren't gamers, but they wanted to play games. And then you're going, man, right, okay, non-gamers, look at my games collection and go, not really designed for family games and non-gamers. And I'm racking my brains thinking, okay, I've got to start with something relatively simple. And I just start crossing things and they're thinking, that's got a few complicated mechanics. But we end up playing 4 games.
4 games. Look at you.
I know. And we started with Tiger and Dragon, then Carcassonne, then Cascadia, and then Stomp the Plank. Which mostly a tile placement of some regard, whether it's the domino tiles in Tiger and Dragon. But the whole way through was you've got to think about the audience, and I think that's the same. Whatever game I have, what experience has that gaming group got or person has got? What have they played before? What might help me explain the rules? Because it might be, remember this in Terraforming Mars? Well, here's some iconography that is similar to that kind of game. So I usually try to gauge my game group. There's no point bringing a Lacerda out if all we've ever played is Wingspan or something, medium weight. Yeah, so last night was a good test. So when I was teaching games last night, I was thinking about this episode. And the whole way through, thinking about the rule book, thinking about how you explain. And most of those games I don't need the rule book for. I can teach them without the rule book because they're relatively simple. But it is the language. And I know we're going to do an episode on board game slang. Maybe that's what we should call it.
Yeah.
But I think my first bit without teaching any board game is know the audience and know their experience.
Right.
Maybe even the theme, a little bit of theme. I know, like, there's no point teaching carry many space games unless I can oversell it on the theme or the objectives. How about you and Katie?
So
similar or different?
I think you're right. Know your audience. That's absolutely. I can't disagree with anything you just said. Although some people might want me to disagree with you. I can't. I think it's valid. So we were talking about this episode. So we're thinking about it this morning. Next week, a week from today, the recording, not the airing of this episode, is my birthday. And as a result, Katie got me a game from Titan. I got Moonrakers. I showed you a picture of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
my wish list.
And it's the Titan edition. So it's like their Kickstarter.
It's
the Kickstarter exclusive with all the metal coins and the full 3-dimensional spaceships and the insert and the trays and everything. It's beautiful. So we're learning to play the game this morning to play it. And what did we do? What's common with a lot of people, right, is rather than read a rule book, watch a video, right? What we actually did was we watched Becca Scott from Geek and Sundry.
Yeah.
She had like a little 18-minute kind of quick overview. The reason we chose that versus like the official IV Studios video, which was longer and things of that nature, is we were going to set up the insert, right? Because it was really difficult. It was like, where do things go? They have their own place.
Yeah.
But after watching her video, so that is a way of teaching a game, is watching a video. But she taught us the components and a high level, how the game plays, and we were ready to go. So then we opened up the box, we put everything, we opened all the cards and everything, the stickers for the labels on the insert, because it's a beautiful insert that the game comes with, and then put everything in its place, and we played the base game and had a great experience, right? But that's because the two of us are together.
Mm-hmm.
So we're able to do that, right? That's not how we would teach a game to either a group of non-gamers or our gaming group if we're introducing a new game, or if we're taking a game to a convention where you'll be real soon, UK Games Expo.
Yeah.
You might teach a group of gamers a game. This is not how we would do it, but it's how we chose to do it for this one experience. And I knew that we were going to eventually talk about all the different, because that's the whole thing is, all right, so you don't like a rule book, you go to a video. Well, who do you go to, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I've just learned an Age Contrived, which arrived this week.
Yep.
Rulebook's pretty good. Player Aid's pretty good.
Okay.
But it is got some medium weight moving parts, and I wasn't sure. So they had a video on their website themselves, which was pretty good, very concise. But there are certain accounts on YouTube that I will not watch, who other people love, but I just don't like the style and the way that it's presented. So Becca Scott, I will often watch. So I think it is, and some rule books are an absolute disaster, and sometimes that ends up being on the shelf of opportunity or shrink.
Board game backlog,
because the rulebook is so bad that it's just not worth the effort of trying to learn it. And often some games haven't even got a video that works either. But usually I prefer the rulebook. Maybe it's because I like the detail. But if it's a bit of a struggle, or I'm not sure, I'll always go and watch a video just in case, like I did this evening.
Yep.
On that game.
One of the things that sets, and this is not exclusive to Becca Scott and Geek and Sundry, but that sets her apart from others, is it's all about the technology you have, right? So she's typically standing up at the table, talking to the camera, addressing the viewer. And while she's describing a card, she has the technology to project the image of the card on the screen. And then when she talks about the components, it'll highlight the components of the card as she's talking, right? So whenever we're in person teaching, Katie likes to read the rule book. She's very detail oriented. Now, one of the reasons why she and I work so well together is that I'm a very big picture guy. Theme, let's get it together. Let's get the right people at the table. Let's do this.
You sell the dream.
Yes. And
Katie makes it reality.
She makes it it's true. Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
So she has to read the rule book, and she likes to do that. Now, you come to our house, we're going to teach a game. Katie's going to teach it to you because she's absorbed the rule books. When she's talking about, oh, you're going to get a contract card, I will grab a contract card out of the box and place it in front of you because we're technology deprived. And I will point
with your finger.
I will point to whatever she's talking about, right? So we work really well together in that regard. Or maybe we don't. You'd have to have her on and see what she thinks. But yeah, so we like to do that. And I would do that with you. If you were teaching a game and I was with you, I would pull out of the box and point and whatnot, because some people are visual learners, some are auditory, some are detail. So yeah, I mean, teaching is just as hard as learning a game.
Yeah, I think my normal technique would be read the rule book, set the game up, read the rule book.
Yep.
By setting up the game on the table, I've usually got the basic foundations of the components.
Right.
Then I usually, it's assumed the rule book is a good rule book, and I've nailed the learning of it. I usually play 2 or maybe 3 rounds to go through the key actions and see whether I can explain it.
Right.
And then once that's done, I'll reset it and hopefully somebody wants to play it with me. Or as sometimes happens, I make all the effort and then no one's available. I pack it back in a box. And if it stays in the shelf for another 6 months, it was all for waste. But I had a good time learning the game on my own.
Yeah.
So I think, so we've got the right group, the right game for that group.
Yeah.
And then before teaching that game, ideally I've been through that rule book and setup and rounds. I think the worst thing, and Carrie doesn't like this, is if I read from the rule book. Or if some games I've played and I have to, I'm like, I think I remember the rules. And so I set it up and then I guess I reference the rule book just to remind myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the rule book is there as a reference. It's not supposed to be a script.
Right.
So I do find myself sometimes reading it out loud, and I'm like, man, that's pretty terrible. And of course, if I ever do get stuck, it's usually quicker sometimes to just Google and get yourself on Boardgame Geek.
Yeah.
Because other people have asked, if I'm asking a question, I expect another person has asked the question and even asked Boardgame Geek has given the concise.
So Katie and I were talking about, all right, so what would we say to the person who posted on Facebook? It's like, well, here's the reality, right? Okay, step 1, somebody has to know the rules if you're going to play a game. Then number 2, you start off by explaining the win conditions. Okay.
Yeah, your objectives. Yeah.
Yep. And then
agreed.
And then number 3, you'll explain the mechanics of the game. Number 4, the iconography, which, if you have a really good player aid, this is helpful. And then 5 is the explanation of the mechanics, as it were. And then here's the question. Katie and I will often do this. Do you do a dry run? You're going to teach a game at UK Games Expo? Are you going to play it? Or are you just going to read the rules, absorb it, and go? Do you try to play it at home beforehand?
If anything, if I've got to teach anything or somebody wants to teach, the worst thing is saying I can play it and then turning up and having to read the rule book with them.
Right.
So
right.
even if I haven't played it for a while, I will get the rule book out and refresh, which people won't know, but I'll always do a refresh because I mean sometimes I sit at UKGE and if I do buy new games, it's quite rare that I'll get them to the table because the last thing I want to do is sit with a group of 4 other players or 3 other players and learn the rules. And I see people get some beasts of games out and they're all sitting there, all new players to the game, thinking, man, that's a lot of time investment, but everyone to themselves. But I will, I'll generally try to have learnt the rules, or at least again watch a video of something that someone's saying, can you teach me? So yeah, I think I've got the same as you. I've got set out the objectives, the actions, kind of the phasing, any player unique stuff. The hardest games to teach, talk about players unique, is asymmetric games when everyone is different. That one's always a bit more complex. Yeah, because you're like, okay, I've got to teach the game mechanics, and you're all doing different stuff. So if you just want to go and read your phone for a minute and come back to me.
Speaking of, let me ask you this question. So what do you do with, we see this all the time. You get a group together, you're going to teach a game. So you're looking through the rule book, or you're explaining the game. You're ready to explain it to everybody. And people are on their phones, and gamers do this, right? Across the board, not singling any one individual out by any means. And they're not listening to you.
Or, as I have found, people are watching videos as I teach. She knows who she is. She's listening. Because they learn in a certain style. Right. So we're all trying to learn the game as we go.
Yep.
Sometimes. If I'm teaching it one-on-one, let's say Carrie, and Carrie is distracted by Instagram or something, I find it exhausting because I've just spent however long trying to teach the rules. And then someone goes, well, what was this? Well, I just said that 30 seconds ago. So teaching is pretty intense.
Yeah.
Now, I joke about this, but I do think it happens a lot. Generally, if I teach, I lose. And that's not because I'm saying I'm a bad player. But if I have to teach, I'm generally making sure that everyone on the table is having a good time.
Yep.
So I'm watching everyone's moves.
Yes.
And when I get to me, I'm like, okay, I don't know, I'm just going to do this. Then I'm still checking the rules. I'm checking the rule book to make sure we have it, particularly if it's a new game that we're playing through for the first time.
Yeah.
I find I'm more focused on making sure the game is played well, and I'm sure there's rule gaffes, it doesn't matter so much, but that everyone's had a good time.
Right.
But generally, first game, I lose. Very, very common.
So let's say Age of Contrived is a good example because that's a new acquisition for you. Let's say you're going to get your Southampton group over to the house to play.
Yeah.
Would you, and if you do, how often do you recommend to George and Diz and the whole group to watch a video before they show up at the house?
A lot.
Yeah.
Particularly if it's a complex game and the video is good enough.
Yeah.
I think we all say, please watch this video. Or sometimes, like, if it's like Twilight Imperium, because we play it once a year.
Right.
It's usually, right, guys, watch the normal video and everyone skips through it. But yeah, in most of my gaming groups, if we've got a new gaming table, I will try to get everyone to watch it, because it also means if when we do the teach, somebody goes, I don't know, that's that bit. And we usually pick up, somebody's concentrated enough to pick up the rule gaffes as we go. No, I think that's a good recommendation. If it's a good video, everyone should try watch it before coming over. That does help.
So amongst all the videos out there to teach a game, who's your favorite? Do you have a favorite? We talked about Becca Scott, of course, but do you have a favorite?
I'm just going to go. It's the same. I think it's the same guy who did the video for Age of Contrived. He's also done the recent Feudum, but You've put me on the spot, so I'm searching for it.
Well, I didn't mean to. I figured if he or she were your favorite, you'd be like,
remember,
"Oh yeah."
I don't do names.
Okay.
I can't remember names of actors or. I think I'll turn my volume down before I press play because nobody wants to hear this on. I think this is the video. Yeah. So the one person who is definitely piquing my interests and is on Feudum. If you Feudum's on Kickstarter coming up. Just a little drop a plug then.
Mm-hmm.
Is Knights Around a Table.
Knights Around a
Table. So
and that's
Ryan Creighton.
Ryan Creighton.
His teachers are excellent.
Okay.
Like top notch. All the bits of visual you just talked about.
Yep.
I think he did Feld. That's where I'd not heard about him before, but he did the Feld video. Has done a Feudum video, and has also done a video for An Age Contrived. And it was very enjoyable. Knights Around a Table.
Okay.
Go check it out. I'll watch a Rodney video.
I mean, Rodney is probably the most trustworthy name in the business, I think, when it comes to teaching a game.
Watch a Rodney video.
I mean, that's kind of Katie and I, if we're not going to read the rule book, which of course she's going to, because I can't do it. I mean, I will if I've got to. Does Rodney have a video?
Yeah, and normally because he's linked to Board Game Geek, they're bumped at the top. They're even easier finds. Another one for heavier games. I think it's Game in a Nutshell.
Game in a Nutshell. Yep. I know them.
Can't remember what nationality. But usually does things. I think I've watched one recently for Horseless Carriage. All the Spotter games.
Yep.
So quite good at teaching the more complex. Paul Grogan, Gaming Rules.
Okay.
Often works with Lacerda.
Yeah.
The heavier games.
Yeah.
So they're probably ones that I would jump out at me. There's always others, but yeah, Rodney. If you want a straight, you know what you're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how about here's the next question. It's like you're being interviewed today.
Yeah.
What are or have been some challenging situations, challenging behaviors that you've had to experience while trying to teach a game? And how have you handled it? How did you overcome that situation?
I can't actually think of any. I guess there's been times where people challenge me on the rules.
Yeah.
And I think I've said one rule, I've read it out and gone, yeah, that's right. And then I've read it 10 minutes later and gone, no, I've definitely got it wrong. So you get the odd person who sort of gets frustrated, but it's just a game, right? And
sure,
sometimes if we get the rule halfway through, we'll decide whether we'll reset or just go is what it is, and maybe finish the round with the rule that we had in place, and then we fix it so everyone's had the equal opportunity.
Yep.
So we might do that. I mean, I've had bad experiences being taught when I've had to get my phone out and go. There's a classic game that our gaming group talks about, where one of my friends who may or may not be listening to the show,
sure,
would admit he's not the greatest teacher of board games.
Okay.
But had a habit of teaching us games. Taught me Carcassonne so badly that I removed it from existence in my gaming collection. In fact, we were saying this last night.
Wow.
And then we played it, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't a game experience I remember." And then there's another game when it was a new game, Kickstarter. We'd been taught the game. I was like, I guess as a gamer, you do roughly know how games are going to play,
right?
Based on the mechanics, and I'm like, there's something not right in this game.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem to work. Either it's a terrible, terrible game, or we're missing something. And I just said, pass me the rule book. And I was like, okay, I don't know what game we're playing, but the game is not the game in this rule book.
Right.
And just completely bad teach. Which then I read the rule book, and I then, I guess salvaged a game into be better it was. But that game scarred, a bit like Carcassonne was. So a bad teacher can really give a bad impression on the game.
Absolutely. Oh,
you know what I mean?
yes. There are at least, what is there, 2 games? There's 2 games that I will never play. Like, I refuse to play these 2 games. I will never play them. And the teach was so terrible. I can't. If they hit the table, I won't play. Tiny Towns.
Tiny Towns. It's like Carcassonne, right? How can you get that wrong?
Yeah,
But
it was a horrible, horrible teach. Horrible teach. And I'm like, I look at that game and I'm like, I want to play it. No, I don't. But the one game that I absolutely will never play, like, I will walk out of the house. If I see it on your board, if I see it on your shelf, I want to set it on fire. The game, not your shelf. And that's Food Chain Magnate.
Why?
I hate that game so much.
That game though the game itself is unforgiving. So if you're a new teach and you haven't told people about the advantage of the first couple of rounds,
and so
again, that's a good game if you explain to people that the game is unforgiving. It's punishing.
But okay, now that is not saying, hey, this game is punishing or this game is unforgiving. That's not a good teach.
But you have to explain. No, you have to.
And therein lies the rub. I realized it was taught poorly. I have another friend of mine who's like, no, you should give it another chance because it was taught poorly. But
you do need. I think one of the things there is do you?
It's hard because my emotions just run deep for that game, and I'm like, no.
That game. Sometimes you play a game and it is a learning game.
Mm-hmm.
And we still score it, but I'll put a note in the scoring app that it was a teaching game. There are some games, I think, like Food Chain Magnet, that I would teach and play 2 or 3 rounds and then say, let's restart the game. So you've got, at least people have got to have it.
That's not a bad idea. That's a game
that unforgiving. Just so people have got the idea, because it's within, is it 3 turns? I can't quite remember this one, but
it's
pretty quick. If you haven't prepared to grab those cards when everyone else grabs the cards, you're on the back foot.
I'm still not sold, but I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I can see and hear. This man doesn't like Food Chain Magnet.
So here's one. What do you do when you encounter a gamer or a player at the table who just doesn't? Who's like, can we just play the game?
As in, they want to get on with it.
Yes.
Well, I think there are some teaches where it's just better not to do the teach.
Right.
So, like you say, you might do the theme. You might set out the. Yeah, I think theme's important and the objectives and roughly what you do, and then depending on maybe how the round mechanic is, I wouldn't teach. Sometimes I don't even tell people how to score until round 2 or 3. Yeah. So I'll wait for the scoring so that we've all got a head around the mechanics and then bring the scoring in.
Right.
It's a really fine balance of you don't want to overcomplicate the teach and teach them everything. But I think you have to say, let me teach you the basic moves and then we'll crack on and I'll teach other mechanics. The Age of Contrived, the rulebook actually has a whole page on teaching. So it has, these are the things that you should explain. Some groups like to get straight into it. So if you're going to do that, then teach these 3 things. And then it's got basically, when you get to this point, teach this. So it's actually it's a really, really good rulebook and a good player aid.
Okay.
But I've not seen many rulebooks that do that in terms of actually outlying how maybe to structure the teach depending on the gaming group you have.
Interesting.
Yeah, have a look.
Yeah.
It also has the most technical player boards I've ever seen, and it took me an hour and a half to build them out of metal.
Wow.
And they are the most unnecessary metal player boards. I mean, they're so funky. but
So
you do not need them. But that's another episode.
our friend Brandy, boarding school with Brandy, she
Yeah.
picked up a copy and she did a video where she was putting it together, and it's like it fits back in the box. Did it fit back in the box?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good insert, really good. I mean, the components are another level. But it's set up downstairs, which I'm not sure I'm going to get a teach-in tonight. But what's your? Have you got a favorite game to teach, or a favorite type of game to teach?
Ooh.
Like,
Ooh. I mean, the one game that I can teach blindfolded now is Obsession.
Yeah.
Just because we've gotten that, right? Like, if I have to look at the rule book, I've done something horribly wrong. You know?
I got to when we played it at Cajun Con, I grabbed the rule book because I find one of my favorite things in that rule book is the pie chart with the stats of how you get victory points.
Sure.
So I grabbed like my favorite bits is that 23% of the points come from whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that really helps explain people where do you focus your energy.
That is a good point.
I mean, it's one of the bits I really think it really helps explain Obsession, which
True.
we've now managed to bring onto the episode. So good work, PJ.
Hey, thanks.
In terms of the teach, because people say that rulebook is one of the worst. It gets loads of grief
because he's got a lot of information packed into that rule book. I mean, it's not.
I find it okay, but other people say it's terrible. And I'm like, actually,
I mean, it's not the best, but it's not the worst.
Depends whether you got maybe a log. I find it quite logical, and I think in a very logical way. So it is very logical, and sometimes things are scattered in the like what's it called, the glossary, or it's not the glossary.
The glossary.
It's like a second. There's a second book, isn't there? With
it's a glossary.
Glossary.
Or iconography and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So my favorite thing to do is let Katie read the rule book. I usually go watch a video, and then the way I like to teach is I like Katie to do all the technical teaching, and I like to be her little, her mouse where I'm pointing to the thing, just because
what you need is a little torch that when you point, you shine a little spotlight onto.
I do need a laser pointer or something.
Laser
yes,
pointer.
I do need. We do need one of those because I think we teach well together. I don't know if she thinks that, because sometimes I think that she thinks I'm being silly when I'm actually trying to help, which is fair. But yeah, what about you? Do you have a favorite game that you like to teach?
It's probably games that jump out. Games we've played a lot. So like through lockdown, even online, I taught viticulture with Tuscany,
right?
To tons of players, just because A, I know it the back of my hand, and B, it's a really nice intro into worker placement. As long as I still believe you got to play the Tuscany or the essential bits,
right?
Another game I always enjoy teaching is like Raiders of the North Sea.
Okay.
So just medium weight games that you can just sit people down and get them playing.
Yeah.
What I do enjoy is teaching people games and not actually playing. So, which I did with Obsession. So just getting people set up and then go, right, okay, you guys are good, and then go and teach another group of players another game.
So
I find that massively rewarding.
Yep. I'm going to tell you a story about a friend of mine here in Springfield. He's going to dread this because he hates it, because he's like, every once in a while he's like, is he talking about me? No. And I'm usually not, but I am right now. So I have a friend of mine who we had a group play Captain Sonar, right?
Oh yeah.
And so that's 8 players, right?
Yeah, which is asymmetric as well.
It is asymmetric because in the roles you play. So he taught 8 people how to play the game and taught them each their role, their individual roles, and how it interacts. And then he didn't play, and he was just thrilled. He was over the roof. And I get that. I do get that feeling. When I say I get it, I mean I understand it. I am not that way with board games, but I am that way with other things, right? So yeah, I totally get that you want to teach. And So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I get that. I totally get it. I prefer not to teach. I like to help Katie. I don't like to teach board games. I don't know. I feel like there's too much on the line, right? I don't know.
Oh yeah. See, I don't. Yeah, I quite like that little bit of pressure. I guess it's all part of. I guess because we host quite a bit. I guess
Sure.
it's part of being the host. It's when people come over, they want to play games,
Mm-hmm.
and they suggest games that I really like, and then I'm like, oh, I can't remember the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that means I'm gonna have to read the rule book.
Right.
Oh, and then I kind of go, it's a bit of a complex one, and then we kick it
Sure.
down the track. So we now try to make sure that if we're going to select games, that it's games that either hit the table, people know to play, or
Right.
somebody in the group knows to play.
Right. We
Trying to think. Yeah.
So like Age of Atlantis was a game we picked up. I had picked it up in Nashville, and I really wanted to play it with our gaming group. Now, Katie and I played it at 2 players to see how it felt. And then we had our friends come over. I said, hey guys, watch this video, right? So sometimes, especially with a heavier game, right? Like a Lacerda or something, that heavyweight. If I've got some friends coming over, I want you to watch a video so that it will alleviate the pressure of teaching so we can dive into the game, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do recommend using videos as a supplement. You know, not that we're not going to teach you the game, but if you can come in with some context, because context is key. It's good. Context is key.
Nice. Context is key.
Yeah.
What? Because how about Boardgame Geek player aids? So there's certain games which I think there's a lot of detail. The player aid, it might even be okay, but you're like, man, I could do a turn order. There's some games that don't even come with a turn order, like a little crib sheet. So hegemony, there's got flowcharts.
Yep, hegemony's beautiful.
But the flowcharts really work.
Yep.
Harrow County.
Oh,
somebody's made beautiful 1-page summaries for all the rules for each family, which I printed out straight away and just thought, man, like it replaces the rule book, and it just brings it all to a concise 1-pager.
So there's 2 games that come to mind where there's no player. The player aid is built on the map, on the player mat.
Yeah. Okay.
So Obsession. Yeah. Obsession, the turn order, to Dan's credit, the turn order is printed on the house mat, right? So if you have any questions about what do I do, the turn order is there for your summary. The other one is Heat, pedal to the metal. So the first 2 actions where you take your cards, you set what gear you're going to be in, and then you play that number of cards face down. That's simultaneous. And then you take turns, right, in pole position. And it's like, okay, so you play your cards and you move. And then there's, are you in last place? Yes or no? Do a thing. Cool down, right? And you go through all the steps. Check your going around the turn, which we discovered is that Craig's wife, Becky, can't take turns.
and Craig taught me. I can't remember.
All I know is he taught Katie and I Heat while we were at his house.
Yeah.
We have a copy of the base game and the Heavy Rain expansion.
Yeah.
I had to play it 4 times to beat Katie because she's such a good racer. But that's a fun game, and I like everything's on your mat.
It's on the mat, yeah. Little
when your player mat is also your player aid. That is amazing. Works really well. That's an amazing supplemental teach design, and I'd like to see more board games implement that.
The only game where I've made my own player aid is Obsession.
It's true. You sent me a copy. It was really helpful.
Did I?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I should publish it on Boardgame Geek. It was just it's just the tokens you set up per player and the number of the rooms with the pictures on it.
The
heritage.
Oh my God.
We've both forgotten, but you know what I mean.
Monuments.
Monuments. brain are completely blank. And on the other side is the different points you get for whichever level you upgrade to.
Reputation.
Reputation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it'd be quite satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
I thought I'd follow up last week's episode of what does the AI suggest?
Yes, what does the AI suggest?
So the AI suggested if I asked it a question around structuring a board game teach, it said do an introduction. I'm going to do the headings. Understand your audience.
Oh,
it's done well there.
Yep.
Prepare. So that's familiar yourself with the rules, the components. Organize the components neatly and ensure you have that. So you get your little storage trays. It's done
That's
well.
right.
Set the stage. So theme, objective, mechanics, which we covered. This is step-by-step rules explanation. Break down the rules into chunks. Use clear and concise language, avoiding jargon and complex terminology. Episode coming soon for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Hands-on learning. Practice round or demonstration to reinforce understanding. Guide players through their first few rounds. Allow players to experiment and make mistakes. I definitely let that happen.
Oh,
I
yeah.
do.
We didn't even talk about that. You've got to.
Yeah, you kind of let them do it, but then I do try to point people. We were playing Cascadia last night. I had taught all of the cards, so the scoring cards,
Mm-hmm.
and I was doing my kind of doing my own thing. I looked up and was like, "Oh, okay, no one's going to score any points on these two boards." That's just my mother and father-in-law. Where
Right.
I think the birds were to be separate, and all the birds were in a row. So they
Oh,
got the
they're in a
rules.
row.
They got the rules right, but for the wrong animals.
For the wrong animals. Yep.
So they have listened.
I
But
just got
thought,
the
I'm just not going to worry about it.
I got the folded space color insert for Cascadia, and I posted a few pictures today on Instagram.
I'm gonna have a look at that.
Yeah, they're really nice. I love their color line is great, but yeah, Cascadia is a good game.
Hands-on learning, then strategic tips, and then reference materials. So
like player
aids, and recommend online resources or tutorials for further learning. And then the final. Oh no, there's 11 tips. We're at number 9. Engagement, interaction.
Okay.
Foster a positive and inclusive atmosphere.
Yeah.
Emphasize the importance of sportsmanship and respectful gameplay. There's a topic. Cheats at board games.
Ooh.
Yeah. I've got a friend. I know somebody. You always got to watch.
Uh-huh.
Oh, how did you get those 3 gold? Not part of our gaming group at the moment, though, so don't worry, anyone listening. Then conclusion. It sounds a bit formal, but that's so yeah. I guess that's quite an interesting summary of what we just covered.
And that's going to be a new feature of our show.
I think it will be.
We're going to end with what does AI suggest?
What's AI suggest this week?
Yep.
And see where it goes. It wasn't so good at suggesting a title this week, was it?
No.
So we've stuck with our own. Okay. Well, that was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. This was good conversation. Thanks.
Yeah. So, what's next week going to be?
So next week, which we normally don't do this, but I think we're going to piggyback off of this, is we're going to talk about like gamers jargon. The question is, how do you talk to non-gamers about our hobby? Is kind of that's from the overarching
intro of board games through to when you. Yeah. So we had a Carrie went out with her friend on Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
Her friend came back to get a lift home. They had a few drinks, and she wandered into the games room and said,
"What is this?"
She was like, "What is it? Yeah, what is this?" Yep. And then I had to explain it, thinking how she asked me. I'll save the questions for next week. But it's a bit like teaching board games. You have to stop and think about your response,
right?
Because you could really, you could disengage when actually what you want them to do is come around and play games.
So make sure everybody listening, y'all tell us some of your favorite stories about how do you like to teach a game, how do you like to learn a game. But also, if you want to get on Instagram at Meeple to Meeple, send us a DM and give us some of your approaches. How do you talk to people about our hobby, and
or your favorite acronyms,
and we'll share them on air. So
okay,
yeah,
right. Thanks, PJ. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Please subscribe, and as always, we love to hear your thoughts and ideas. So make sure to leave those in the comments. And don't forget, you can also chat with us both on Instagram at Meeple to Meeple.